Meredith, thank you so much for joining me on the Happiness Happens podcast.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here.
I'm really excited to have you today because for my listener right now, Meredith and I became friends at very random. I think we had met each other at Podfest and then kind of like forgot that we met each other there. And then another friend reconnected us and I was like, "Wait, hold on." I was like, "I know who you are. Like we've met before." And the rest is
Yeah, I
history.
was like, "Are you the blonde?" And you were like, "Are you the other
Are
blonde?"
you the
And
other
I
one?
said, "Yes."
Are you Meredith for real? I'm
For
like,
real, I am.
for real. I'm like, I know you though. And so just again, more context for our listener. You and I hopped on like a call and we just started chatting and I was like, oh my God, I love her energy. Like I was like, I want to be around it all the time. I was like, I love this. And then we were chatting and we were chatting and I was like, you need to just come on my podcast because we were talking about so many different things. I couldn't even tell you what we were talking about. But I was like, you need to come on my podcast and just share who you are with my listeners because your insight is so beautiful and it's so special. And so that's why I wanted to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invite.
Oh my goodness, of course. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the first question that I ask. I don't have any questions prepared for our interview together, but I do have one. And I actually do have a closing question that I always ask. So, okay, two prepared questions.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
I guess it's fine. Uh, so my first question for you, and I start the show like this every single time, is what does happiness mean to you?
Well, that is quite a first opening question. I can't quite separate happiness from joy
Mm,
because I feel like joy is kind of the anchor, and happiness is the ups. And you can't have the ups without the downs, but the
mm,
baseline is joy. And joy is kind of what gives you that trust like, hey, we're having a down, but we're going to have an up. And so I think, happiness, to be very literal, is the ups. But for me
mm,
personally, happiness is something that I feel when I do novel things, like I travel to new places, or I recently have been trying different biohacking things like ice baths and stuff like that. And I love that. I love when I can also connect with another person soul to soul and it feels really, really right. That also
mm.
brings me a lot of happiness.
I love that. And those soul connections are so rare and they're so special because it feels different. And I love that you said that because it brings a different awareness and a different like level of awareness into your life, I think.
It does. Yeah, because it's a clue, right? It's
Oh,
part of the breadcrumbs of, where you should be going. I kind of joked, and forgive me if I've already told you this, but since we're on mic and official, I can say it again and you can act like it's brand new. I feel like I'm a little lost in the right direction. And there was a game that I played when I was a kid where one kid would put something over their eyes and the other kid would choose an object in the room. The kid that was blindfolded would walk forward and then the other kid would say, "Oh, you're cold." So you would turn, you would adjust, walk a different direction. "Oh, you're getting warmer." And then when you were really close to the object, they would say, "You're hot, you're hot." So generally I call this hot, hot, cold, right?
I like
And
that.
I am kind of making decisions lately with that in mind, going in the direction of people, places, and experiences that feel warm. And when you
Mm.
make that soul connection, that's what that feels like. It's like a warm feeling all through your body that, hey, there's something about this person that you should stay close to.
Interesting. Okay, you actually haven't told me that before, so I'm hearing it for the first time. So, but I like the way you said that, like lost in the right direction, because I feel like that has been the theme of my life for quite a little bit now. And I guess one thing that I would love to hear from you is, or know, or learn is how do you do something like that without, okay, I have to preface this question because I feel like looking at it from the other side now, like looking at it from the opposite side of where I, I was to where I am, I don't think that I would have made the decisions that I made if I knew how much I would have changed and how much my life would have changed. I think I would have been like fearful of the change, if that makes any sense.
You talking about from being in corporate to being a podcast producer?
No, just like more in my personal life, to be honest with you. Like, so I haven't really shared much of this on the podcast, but oh my God, am I sharing it? Okay, I'm gonna share it. And if I have to cut it, I will cut it. But I will share it. So So, I've been with my partner for 10 years and went down a very spiritual path for the last, I would say, like 4 or 5. And it's actually brought us to like a place of separation, and which is interesting, but it happens sometimes. You know what I mean? And so, like, I don't know if, like, I know on one hand that that is the soul path. You know what I mean? And then on the other hand, I'm like, but if I just didn't change too much, then maybe it would have been okay. You know what I mean? So, like, how
Mm.
do you, with, I guess, that context in mind, how do you lean into those nudges and those, soul connections in people, places, things, whatever it is, and then still anchor yourself back down to the life that you live every single day?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. And thank you for
Mm.
sharing that with me.
Well,
Being
you and all my
vulnerable.
listeners are new to hearing that, so that's fun.
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, being vulnerable sucks.
It
It's
does.
not like, what should I do today? You know what? I think I'm going to share some very personal data with a lot of strangers on the internet, so
Let us stress.
I just want to take a pause and acknowledge what you just said. That's pretty
Thanks.
cool that you were willing to share that, because a lot of people relate to that, and
Mm.
I think it does keep people stuck a lot. So don't let me get too off this rabbit trail, but I just want to rabbit trail to a related subject to the fear that you're talking about,
Mm.
because as it relates to happiness, see what I did there? Your two shows combined.
I love that so much.
We humans are very adaptable, and I think it's a
Mm.
great feature. Women especially, I think, are very adaptable. And while that's good, it comes with drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks is that we tend to become miscalibrated,
Mm.
right? So we think we're happy, we think we're satisfied, we think we're doing good because we're actually miscalibrated. Our little north arrow is actually like going southwest, but we don't know it because our little compass is miscalibrated, because we're adaptable as humans. We're also survivors. So we will adapt in a situation where that's less ideal by, being more positive or finding the silver lining, and all of those are good things. But when you are consistently having to tell yourself a different story in order to
Mm.
survive, then your happiness meter is miscalibrated and you just go in a direction that is not right for you. And then you come at the end of your life and you're unhappy.
Right.
And you realize that you look back at your life and you realize, wow, I don't think I ever was happy. And so I think it's important to have those moments of, those come to Jesus moments where you're like, we need to recalibrate what is going on and listen to those warm feelings, because that is what calibrates us to where we're supposed to be at. So
Mm.
back on track with your
I
question.
love that. That was a perfect
Thanks.
side tangent to off track us, and now I love that. Okay, so then back to my original question, how do you do all of these things without derailing your entire life? You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
guess too, the other thing of this is like, is it really a derailment? You know what I mean? Like, how, I don't know. I'm trying to make sense of so many things in my head, and they're hard things to make sense of, because on one hand, it's like you can look at something and be like, okay, but this was the path and this is how it was supposed to be. You know what I mean? And then on the other hand, you can look at something and be like, but maybe if I just made a different choice, or like maybe if something else was different, or like whatever. It's kind of like, there's an infinite reality of, like, an infinite amount of possibilities in our awareness and our reality. And at any moment, we could choose a different thought and have a different outcome, right? We can choose a different, different step, and you can have something new. And so it's kind of like, now I sit in this space almost every single day of like, how do I even explain? Like, are the choices that I'm making the actual right choices? And am I making them from a place of alignment? Or have I been making them from fear? You know what I mean? I,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
your
do know what
turn.
you mean.
Your turn.
Yeah. And go.
And go.
Um, the questions that you ask yourself are important. And so I think you can stay anchored, whatever that means for whatever person,
Mm,
by the questions that you're asking yourself. So a helpful question to ask oneself is, what problem am I solving for? Because
mm,
if you're the type of person that is a trend chaser, or, you tend to get caught up in the current of whatever is hot at the moment,
yeah,
or whatever you're feeling at that time, and then you look up and you realize you're in a totally new space and it's
yeah.
scary and there's consequences that you don't care for.
Right.
If that's your tendency, A, know that about yourself, but B, ask yourself, what problem am I solving for when I'm making this decision? And if
Mm,
it's just to stimulate yourself, then maybe that's not a good decision to make in a full leap. You can take a note from our friend marijuana and do it low and slow. And you can still explore the world around you and try different things, right? Without jumping both feet first if it's not a
mm,
problem you're actually trying to solve for. Because otherwise you
that's
just make more problems.
no, I love that so much. And that's such a really good perspective. And I think too, you know, as I mean, I think women tend to take more time toward situations and to like actually like think about things and like process things. And I've found that in the past, I've never been a good last minute decision maker, if that makes any sense. Like I can make decisions under pressure if I need to, you know what I mean? But I'm not someone who's making the right decisions for me overnight or like even on the spot or whatever. Like I'm someone who I have to take time and sit with something and, process it and like make it make sense in my mind so that when I actually do make a decision, like, the decision I made to like leave corporate and, that was like a 2 year long decision, you know what I mean? Or this decision to, move on to something else in my relationship. You know what I mean? Not even something else. I shouldn't even say it like that. That's not what I mean. It's just like, move on in a different way from what I was doing, if that makes any sense. It's not a decision that's taken lightly. And I think a lot of the times it's like, even though you make really hard decisions that are based in alignment with what you truly want to do and how you want to live your life and where you envision your life going, it doesn't negate how hard it actually is to make that choice. And so then it's like that place where you get stuck in when you look back on your life, 30, 40, 50 years, and you're just kind of like, okay, well, was I ever actually truly happy? And like, there's always moments of joy. There's always moments of happiness, but is there moments of like true, deep, soul fulfilling fulfillment? And I think one thing that I've learned a lot about myself is that I don't think that many people look at life through the lens of wanting to be fulfilled because I think most people don't actually know that that's available to them. And then you kind of like live your life in these shoulds, like I should do this or I should do that. But really, you're allowed to be fulfilled. And like that whole mind, body, soul fulfillment is actually available for you. I think we're just conditioned to learn that it's not.
Yeah, I often think about if the reason that so many of us are conditioned in that way is thanks to the Industrial Revolution. Because
Mm,
when you think about a factory and how a factory works and how a person works in a factory,
hmm
that's a lot of what you just described is, okay,
mm,
well, now I've graduated from high school and now I will go to university and then I will get married and then I will have a mortgage and then I will make tiny humans, like there's nothing wrong with that path. But when everybody's doing it, it is a lot like a factory. And so you can get
mm.
swept up in, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do without stopping and thinking about what you actually want. And then, yeah, like you said, the regret kind of sneaks in.
Exactly. And it's like, like you said, like that factory path is totally, totally fine and valid for like whoever actually wants that. But, it's kind of this like awakening moment. And I know I had this moment within myself. And I know a lot of friends who've also had this moment. It's like, hold on here. Am I living my life for myself or am I living based off of the things that people expected me to do in my life every single day? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is this choice actually mine or is this an expectation that was placed on me based off of the people who love me and like want me to do well in life? You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you listen to people, and I'll use my mom as an example. Like when I was leaving corporate and going out on my own, she was like, "This is a very bad decision, Simona." She's like, "I don't think that, I don't know." She's like, "I don't know about this." Like, she's like, "It's not safe. You don't have benefits. There's no pension." And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, yes, you're not wrong. And I'm still going to do it anyways. Like my parents can count on me to be the daughter that's like, see ya. Like, okay, I would be the daughter to like move halfway across the world and be like, bye. Like, love you. Bye.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy on my podcast named Brandon Murata. He's a
Mm,
filmmaker. I think he's more well known for his documentary on American circumcision. It's a
mm,
documentary by the same name, but he calls a lot of what we do automatically cultural hypnosis. So I have to give him credit for this
cool.
phrase because it's not just like the people that we love, it's also the culture. How else would you explain the fact that we can convince people to go and get a degree for, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases for a job in which the ROI does not cover that debt?
Right.
It's cultural hypnosis.
Right.
Some would call that a scam, but gently we could call it cultural hypnosis. So it's not always just the families that we're from that's to blame. Sometimes it's because, that's
That's what
the
people
world that
do.
we live in. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the world that we live in.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. It's like a really interesting place to be like on the outside of that. You know what I mean? Someone who like doesn't, who kind of is just like, wait, hold on. Like, is that really the thing that I want to be doing? Like, that's a really interesting place to be because everyone's like, what I hear a lot is, oh my God, you're so brave. Like, you're so strong. You're so this, you're so that. I'm like, I just feel like I'm just like living in integrity with what I actually desire in my life. And like, maybe that's brave. Maybe that's strong because maybe other people couldn't do something like that. But then it just makes me think like, how could you live your life in any other way? Like, one thing I've been thinking and saying a lot lately is anytime that I feel overwhelmed, I remember that we're in a big spinning globe in the middle of nowhere. Like,
Oh my
honestly,
gosh, me too.
it's true.
I have never met anyone else who thinks that when they get
Really?
overwhelmed. Yes, I love that you think that. And it just makes you feel like, you know what? I'm good.
I'm
Right?
good because like
Yeah.
it's just it takes the drama out of life. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be so dramatic. Like it doesn't have to be so painful. Like, yes, you're going to have emotions and like you want to feel those emotions. But when you think about it in that way, I think, and how much you can like draw back, it's almost like, okay, but does this little thing matter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or does this big thing really matter? Like at the end of the day, like you can find joy and find happiness in so many different scenarios and things, right?
Yeah.
So,
And at the end of the day, everything is made up, right? Like money, we made that up.
mm,
Marriage,
mm,
that's a concept that we invented. The 9 to 5, it literally, I can tell you the name of the person that made that up. So it's Henry Ford. But like all of our stuff's made up. So when you realize that the things that you're stressed about are manufactured, and then if an alien came down to Earth, which is an interesting example that I chose to use just
mm.
then, considering what's in the news lately. But if you had to explain how Earth worked to an alien, and they think it's ridiculous, then
Yes,
why
they'd
are
be
you
like,
taking
"Bye."
it so seriously? Yeah, like it's a helpful perspective. But I would like to speak to the more risk averse of your audience, right?
Mm,
Because they might view you as quite risk tolerant. Even though you just told me some of your decisions are months or even years in the making, they may not see you that way. They might
that's
be
so
like,
true.
Simona the Conqueror. She just goes out and makes decisions with, force and confidence. So my dear little feelings, for those of you who are more risk averse, I think it might be comforting to know that you can approach the same forks in the road, you can
Mm,
approach the same options in your life by having curiosity, which is a softer way to look at yourself and the world around you. And it was the way that my mom taught me to look at decisions because I was an anxious little child and decisions were so hard. I mean, I'm talking about candy bar at the store
no.
was not accessible to me.
Oh
And
no.
then she was like, okay, you made your decision. Now go up and give it the candy bar and this money to the cash register person. And I was just frozen. I was like, forget it. I don't need a Snickers. So
Oh.
that's where I come from. So my mom would say, because I loved science and I loved, experiments and I loved nature and I loved all of that, she'd go, let's pretend this is an experiment. And so that's really the heart of curiosity is going, what if dot, 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 fill in the blank. What
Mm,
if I moved across the world and did my entire business remotely? What would that look like? How would I feel about that? And
mm.
you can, with the what if, you can insert all the things that you're worried about and reframe them as what ifs. So if you're worried about this is what I always hear about with remote people. How to get my mail? Like your mail is that important. So
I
what if
literally
I
don't even
could
think I would think about the mail, to be honest with you. I think I'd realize in like 6 months, I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't gotten one piece of mail. Like,
those of us who have more
oh
detailed
God.
worries that keep us up at night, trust me, we think about things like mail. And so you could reframe that though as like a what if. Okay, what if I could get my mail through email, like it was scanned? What would that look? How would I feel
Mm.
about that? So you
Hmm.
can take every concern, worry, obstacle, objection, and make it a what if. And through that spirit of curiosity, you'll find something that makes you feel a little bit more confident and brave. And you can navigate through those muddy waters of overwhelm when you're trying to think about different ways of living.
That's beautiful. And I love that so much. I love that you went there because here's the thing. I'm definitely someone who's more extroverted in general. I've always been that way. I've always been loud. I've always been boisterous. I've always when I was younger, especially, I used to take over the conversation, like not even realize that I was doing that until people would call me out and they'd be like, "Can you let other people speak too?" And I'm like, "What?" No, I'm just kidding. But I'm not kidding. So, and you're more introverted than I am. And what's interesting to me is that I have very, very, very high anxiety all the time. And I do play that what if game, but I play it in a different way in my mind. I'm like, what if it doesn't work out? What if it's not a good thing?
Oh,
What if it's not this? What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm making the wrong choice? Like, it's never a positive. It's never a positive what if. For me, the what ifs are always, it's never a curiosity. So I love that reframe because a what if doesn't actually need to be a negative, even though we think that maybe it has to be a negative.
yeah. Like, what if the sky falls out? What if the aliens don't really want to come in peace?
What if
Yeah,
they don't take me away from here? No, I'm just kidding.
right. There's that too.
Like, come bring me
Yeah,
peace.
yeah. Curiosity is such a powerful thing. And yeah, I am definitely more of an introvert. I'm a performing introvert, which is a
Mm,
distinction I like to make because when people meet me and we talk, they, when they have this like tendency to verbally pat me on the head and go, "Oh, sweetie, you're not awkward." I was like, "Bitch, I never said I was awkward. I said I was an introvert." I said I am going to my hotel room after this where I am not sharing space with anyone so I can recharge. So it's about energy in,
mm-hmm,
energy out, right? But that's kind of like both of those things together are the premise of my show is to lead with curiosity because when you do, you explore all of the nuance, the nooks and the crannies, the contradicting aspects of people and the world around you. And it's contrast that makes the world interesting, right? It's
mm,
even from like a makeup perspective, someone with really beautiful bronze skin and then they have like white hair, silver hair. Oh, it's so beautiful because there's a beautiful contrast there. So our
mm,
our world would be so boring if it was not that way, and yet we tend to only surround ourselves with more of what we already agree to, people who are very similar to us. We basically bubble wrap ourselves in sameness, and that sameness just kind of looks boring all around. And
mm,
so I think there's real power as a creator to explore the world with curiosity because you'll find that really beautifully contrasting person or set of thoughts or belief
mm-hmm,
system that
mm-hmm,
you'll explore more. And that's what makes actually that brings me a lot of happiness, to be
mm-hmm.
honest. So, and I think it brings other people too. But when your life is so rudimentary, routine, you've put yourself in an algorithm, not just the digital algorithm, but you wake up, you hit your alarm, you snooze it, you hit it again, you wake up, you drive to work. You don't even drive a different path. Like you literally just drive the same way to work every day
Yeah.
and you talk with the same people, your conversations are probably even very similar day to day. How are you, Bob? I'm good. How was your weekend? Oh, not bad. Kids doing good? Yeah, busy as always. And it's like wash, rinse, repeat,
Yeah.
right? So you've got the same shade of gray all around. But when you mix it up, when you ask a question that's not expected, when you explore an idea, read a new book, do something different, disrupt the pattern, then you've got this stark contrast that can bring a lot of happiness into your life, whereas it was normally just kind of a low, boring, dull, nothingness.
I love this so much. And where were you a few years ago when I first started therapy and trying to understand why it didn't feel like life was enough? I was like, that sparked this whole entire journey and the whole reason why I even have this podcast. Because I kept thinking to myself, like, you know, there has to be more to life than this. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be more to life than just, and that was like back in 2018. I was like, there has to be more than just what we do day in, day out, go to work, go to this, go to that, sit here for 9 hours, have a couple drinks, talk to a friend, have the same conversations on repeat and all this stuff. And I kept wanting more. And I was like, but what is that more? It wasn't even more like in life. Like it wasn't more money, more this, more house, more status. Like it was nothing about that. It was, I think what I was searching for was more fulfillment really in what you're doing every single day. And then started this podcast as a way to sort of help other people feel like they were less alone. And then by that, started meeting new people who expand your awareness and help you grow so much. And I think that choosing not to grow is a choice. You know what I mean? And then I am very like cognizant too, though, that it's not everyone's life path to be doing that. You know what I mean? Like some people are meant to do X, Y, and Z, and some people are not, you know? But it just, you know, every time you have a conversation with someone new about something different, and I think that's why I don't like to script this podcast because, or like make questions for this podcast because, you know, I want to hear what the person is going to say if we're just talking about happiness and where that goes. You know what I mean? Because you learn something new every single time and you get a different awareness and you grow. Like everyone that you meet in your life serves a purpose. And if this conversation today, it helps you grow. You know what I mean? This conversation for me is helping me expand my awareness in so many different ways that I didn't even imagine 30 minutes ago before we started recording. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, wow, this is really wonderful. Like it's really nice.
It is really nice. And these sorts of lines of thought are really normal around entrepreneurial circles.
Mm,
But what I would love to see is for people in more traditional work settings or just traditional life settings to adopt this sort of self-questioning because you
mm.
said, oh, well, not growing is a choice. And that's true, but people who don't make a choice, that becomes their choice.
Mm-hmm.
And not choosing is a choice. And
It's true.
so,
It's true.
yeah,
That's
and I
true.
think
But it's also about
so
awareness too, though. Like you can only do what you can in life with the awareness that you have. Like if you don't even have the awareness that you have a different choice, let's say, then how could you make any other choice than what you've been making every single day if you don't have that awareness?
you put different people in your life.
Mm,
You have to break out of the algorithmic bubble that you've
mm,
put yourself in.
I love that.
And again, we know what that means digitally, right? Where you all understand the concept of a digital algorithm feeding us highly palatable posts that it knows we will enjoy. But we do that in our lives too with people. So if like you're a 9 to 5er with mountains of debt, you're probably, if you look around, have other 9 to 5er folks in your lives with mountains of debt. And I'm
Mm,
not saying that's bad, but let's add a new ingredient to the salad. Like, let's mix it up a little bit and add someone who's debt free into your circle. Of course, you and I
mm,
both know that starting a podcast is the most fun way and most elaborate way to make new friends because then you
yeah.
have these really lovely conversations with anybody in the world. But there's other ways to meet other people, online networking groups and, you know, in-person networking groups,
Yep.
meetups that are circled around special interests like activities or thoughts. Book clubs is a great way. But if you just disrupt the pattern, then you can meet new people to loop into your life. And that's how you realize you have other options. But if you only have people of the same profession or the same religious framework or political affiliation in your life, then you're going to feel like, oh wow, this is life. This is the world. This is all there is.
Mm, that is so true. That is such a good point. I love that a lot. I could talk to you for hours. Like literally. I probably could.
We've proven that off
I know.
mic.
But actually though, we had for a while there, we had like a recurring meeting. Like everyone was like every 2 or 3 weeks. We're like, okay, same time, same place. Like talk to you
See
again
you
soon.
then.
Oh my God, I love it. You'll have to come back on my podcast again. But before we close out this episode, I want to know a little bit about your podcast and where people can find it. And obviously where they can find you.
I'm on Instagram mostly, but all the other places too. It's Meredith for Real, and I'm on LinkedIn, Meredith Hackwith Edwards on LinkedIn. My podcast is called Meredith for Real, The Curious Introvert. And the premise is to inspire curiosity instead of canceling.
Mm,
So the world is a big place, and curiosity is not just for 5-year-olds. So we can make the world better by being more curious about people around us. So each episode is totally different. It's every Monday, and it features the questions that people think, but they don't ask out loud
mm,
because they're taboo. So to go back to Brandon Murata example, why do we in the US, especially, I know Canada does too, perform secular circumcisions when the rest of the world doesn't, right? That's a question someone may have asked in private, but not out loud. Why
Right.
is male anxiety stigmatized? How do I make friends as an adult? What else we got? Like, how are sex scenes not a little bit real? How does that happen?
That
Like
is
all
so
these,
true. That's a good question.
yeah, yeah, all these questions, are swingers really that happy? Can they be happily married and swingers? So these are all real examples from the show that we explore so that you're not only entertained, but you kind of train your brain in these outside of the algorithm questions. And the idea is that you would take it offline too. So, and it's everywhere that, you listen to podcasts, all the typical places.
I love that. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, let me ask you my last question before we wrap up this episode today. And it is, what can my listener do today? One way to create a little bit more happiness in their day, every day, starting today.
Practice interoception. It's different than introspection. Interoception is when you connect your body with your mind. And why that's important is because what our busy minds fail to detect in kind of modern society is what our bodies are trying to tell us,
Hmm.
because we're never bored. We're always entertained. We have a device, a person, a show, something on. There's never that moment to listen to the signals that our primitive mammalian, bodies are trying to signal to us. And that could be about decisions, or that just could be like, yo, you haven't pooped in 5 days. Like, these are important messages. Okay. So it's also for happiness. So if you can detect in your body that you feel bleh when you're with your air quotes best friend,
Hmm.
okay, that's good info. If you can detect that, oh my gosh, you feel so happy when you're playing pickleball. That's a weird example, but we'll go with it. I don't play pickleball. Then how can you play more pickleball? So it allows you to follow the path of happiness without a formula, but you have to
Hmm.
listen to your body because it's trying to talk to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Yeah, this was awesome.
It was so much fun. And thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. Be sure to connect with both of us and let us know that you're listening, and screenshot this if you're listening on your phone and tag both of us so we can connect with you and we can see and hear what you loved about this conversation. And I hope you have a lovely day. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.